St. Petersburg, formerly known as Petrograd and later Leningrad, is the second largest city in Russia after Moscow. It is situated on the river Neva, at the head of the Gulf of Finland on the Baltic Sea. The city had a population of 5,601,911 residents as of 2021, with more than 6.4 million people living in the metropolitan area. St. Petersburg is the fourth most populous city in Europe, the most populous city on the Baltic Sea, and the world's northernmost city of more than 1 million residents. As Russia's former imperial capital, and a historically strategic port, it is governed as a federal city. The city was founded by Tsar Peter the Great on May 27, 1703 on the site of a captured Swedish fortress, and was named after the apostle Saint Peter. In Russia, St. Petersburg is historically and culturally associated with the birth of the Russian Empire and Russia's entry into modern history as a European great power. As Russia's cultural center, St. Petersburg received over 15 million tourists in 2018. It is considered an important economic, scientific, and tourism center of Russia and Europe. In modern times, the city has the nickname of being the northern capital of Russia. Nevsky Prospect is a main street located in the federal city of St. Petersburg in Russia. Its name comes from the Alexander Nevsky Lavra, the monastery which stands at the eastern end of the street, and which commemorates the Russian hero Prince Saint Alexander Nevsky. Nevsky Prospect is St. Petersburg's main avenue and one of the best-known streets in Russia. Cutting through the historical center of the city, it runs from the Admiralty to the Moscow railway station and then, after a slight kink, to the Alexander Nevsky Monastery. In the very first days of St. Petersburg it was simply the beginning of the road to the ancient city of Novgorod, but it quickly became adorned with beautiful buildings, squares, and bridges and became the very center of the bustling, rapidly growing city. Nevsky gradually widens as you travel along its length towards the river and is lined with some of St. Petersburg's most impressive buildings. Nevsky Prospect is also the city's central shopping street and the hub of the city's entertainment and nightlife. During the early Soviet years the name of Nevsky Prospect was changed, first and briefly to Proletkult Street, in honor of that Soviet artistic organization. Following the demise of Proletkult already around 1920 the name was changed again, this time to Avenue of the 25th of October, alluding to the day of the October Revolution. Nikolai Gogol described the feverish life of the avenue in his story, Nevsky Prospect, published in 1835. Fyodor Dostoevsky often employed Nevsky Prospect as a setting in his works, such as Crime and Punishment and The Double, a Petersburg poem. The Church of the Savior on Spilled Blood is a Russian Orthodox church in St. Petersburg, Russia, which currently functions as a secular museum and church at the same time. The structure was constructed between 1883 and 1907. It is one of St. Petersburg's major attractions. The church was erected on the site where Narodnaya Volya members assassinated Emperor Alexander II in March 1881. Construction began in 1883 during the reign of Alexander III, 2 years after the assassination of his father Alexander II. The church was consecrated as a memorial to his father. Estimates suggest that the construction cost 4.5 million rubles. The construction was completed during the reign of Nicholas II in 1907. Funding was provided by the imperial family with the support of many private donors. Architecturally, the cathedral differs from St. Petersburg's other structures. The city's architecture is predominantly Baroque and neoclassical, but the Savior on Blood harks back to medieval Russian architecture in the spirit of Romantic nationalism. It intentionally resembles the 17th-century Yaroslavl churches and the celebrated St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. The church contains over 7,500 square meters of mosaics, according to its restorers, more than any other church in the world. This record may be surpassed by the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis, which houses 7,700 square meters of mosaics. The interior was designed by some of the most celebrated Russian artists of the day, including Viktor Vasnetsov, Mikhail Nestorov and Mikhail Vrubel, but the church's chief architect, Alfred Alexandrovich Parland, was relatively little known. Perhaps not surprisingly, the church's construction ran well over budget, having been estimated at 3.6 million rubles but ending up costing over 4.6 million. The walls and ceilings inside the church are completely covered in intricately detailed mosaics, the main pictures being biblical scenes or figures, but with very fine patterned borders setting off each picture. In the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, the church was ransacked and looted, badly damaging its interior. The Soviet government closed the church in 1932. During the Second World War, when many people were starving due to the siege of Leningrad by Nazi German military forces, the church was used as a temporary morgue for those who died in combat and from starvation and illness. In July 1970, management of the church passed to St. Isaac's Cathedral and it was used as a museum. The proceeds from the cathedral funded the restoration of the church. It was reopened in August 1997, after 27 years of restoration, but has not been reconsecrated and does not function as a full-time place of worship. The church is now one of the main tourist attractions in St. Petersburg. The Summer Garden or Letniy Sad in Russian is a historic public garden that occupies an eponymous island between the Neva, Fontanka, Moika, and the Swan Canal in downtown St. Petersburg, Russia, and shares its name with the adjacent summer palace of Peter the Great. Its inception dates back to the early 18th century when Russia took these lands from Sweden in the Great Northern War. Being a monument of landscape architecture featuring original and copied sculptures of classical mythology characters, a former royal palace and a monument to the fable author Ivan Krylev, the garden is now a branch of the St. Petersburg-based National Art Treasury Russian Museum. The park was personally designed by Tsar Peter in 1704, supposedly, with the assistance of the Dutch gardener and physician Nicholas Bidloo. Starting from 1712, the planting of the summer garden was further elaborated by the Dutch gardener Jan Roosen, who was the chief gardener of the park till 1726. The well-known French architect Jean-Baptiste Leblond, who arrived in St. Petersburg in 1716, added to the park the flavor of a garden à la Française. The summer garden was largely completed in 1719. The poet Anna Akhmatova, among others, considered the grill to be a pinnacle of art casting and one of the symbols of St. Petersburg. On April 4, 1866, Dmitry Karakazov made the first attempt to assassinate the Tsar when he walked out of the summer garden. As the attempt proved abortive, the ponderous Summer Grill Memorial Chapel in a Russian Revival style was built over the gate. This reattachment was demolished by the Bolsheviks after the October Revolution. The Peterhof Palace is a series of palaces and gardens located in Peterhof, St. Petersburg, Russia, commissioned by Peter the Great as a direct response to the Palace of Versailles by Louis XIV of France. Originally intending it in 1709 for country habitation, Peter the Great sought to expand the property as a result of his visit to the French royal court in 1717, inspiring the nickname of the Russian Versailles. The architect between 1714 and 1728 was Domenico Trezzini, and the style he employed became the foundation for the Petrine Baroque style favored throughout St. Petersburg. The dominant natural feature of Peterhof is a 16 meters high bluff lying less than 100 meters from the shore. The so-called lower gardens, Nizhny Sad, at 1.02 square kilometers comprising the better part of Peterhof's land area, are confined between this bluff and the shore, stretching east and west for roughly 200 meters. In the early 1700s, the original Peterhof appeared quite different from today. Many of the fountains had not yet been installed and the entire Alexandrine Park and upper gardens did not exist. What is now the upper gardens was used to grow vegetables, and its ponds, then numbering only 3-4 fish. The Grand Palace is not the only historic royal building in Peterhof. The palaces of Montplaisir and Marly, as well as the pavilion known as the Hermitage, were all raised during the initial construction of Peterhof during the reign of Peter the Great.